Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for still being here. I trust that everyone now is fed, happy, full of smiles. It was a fantastic lunch. I think if we made just a big round of applause for all the staff for preparing such a wonderful lunch. Absolutely divine. I can come to this conference any given day, please, if the food is like that. We're now moving on to the next part of today's conference, celebrating diversity. I like to call it the second half of the day. But before we move on to our next keynote speaker, Jeanette Dupree from Tools of Greatness, that was just speaking a little bit earlier, has been so kind to leave a piece of paper like this on everyone's table. So if you look at on your table, you're supposed to have this piece of paper there. So if you'd be so kind to take your pen and just fill in your details, your name, surname, organization, title, email address, mobile number, landline number. This is for engagement dynamics. Now, what will then happen is later on, we'll collect it. Jeanette unfortunately had to leave due to the situation she told us about earlier, her father passing away yesterday, so she will go and attend to some family matters. However, Hilton has remained behind, also part of the engagement dynamics as well as tools of greatness. And Hilton will, when our next panelists come on, while they're busy being mic'd up, Hilton will go around and just collect all of these papers that's filled in by yourselves. And then what we'll do is, after the panel discussion, I think we will then have a lucky draw. And that will be a special offer and draw prize. Talent ID personal process, so it's engagement dynamics course, and you've got the strength finder, you can see all the prices on there. Normal price $4,895, that's for the talent ID personal process. You pay $2,490. Then there's talent ID starter workshop, that's the prices there. Talent ID executive process, the normal price 60,900 Rand, you pay 8,450. Specifically what that is about, Hilton will give some further direction on that as far as the pricing and all that. So the coaching is provided by accredited coaches trained by Gallup or their only approved local training provider. So please feel free to fill in the forms. And then, once you've done that, we will collect it afterwards. It now gives me great pleasure to announce, or introduce rather, the very first speaker for the second half of today's seminar, which thus far have been a phenomenal success. By raise of hands, anyone agree with me? It's been a success so far, yes or no? Yes? Yes. Everyone say yes? Yes. Come on. Yes. 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 Have you watched the movie Yes Man? Somebody who watched the movie Yes Man, so maybe we should go try it one more time. Everyone say yes? Yes! Alright, you know I won't say Amanda! Alright, so it gives me great pleasure and privilege to announce the next speaker. She's Ms. Gale Shabangu, who is the Inclusion and Diversity Lead for South Africa and for Accenture. So, Gale, please feel free to join me on stage. You might want to just rather come that way. It's a little bit easier. Are you mic'd up or would you? Okay, perfect. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So I'm stuck here. I was hoping I'll be able to walk around. Good afternoon, everybody. And I hope it's no pressure for me after hearing that, thus far the day has been successful. So please bear with me and just keep awake if you can. Great, let's start. So who is Accenture? I thought it would be very useful for us to just go through, what the company is about in one slide, I promise. But just to give you a sense as to the breadth and depth of our diversity challenge that we all are trying to deal with. So Accenture is a global company. We operate in more than 120 countries. That gives you a sense. We have more than 250,000. I think as of this morning, we're sitting at more than 260,000 employees worldwide. 10% of them, at least more, just slightly more than 10%, have got a tenure of more than 10 years. So you can imagine the 90% or so, it's 2 years here, 1 year there. A very diverse workforce. 4 generations, definitely. So we are one of those who really are struggling with multifaceted diversity factors that we need to deal with. 10% of our workforce currently is working outside of their home country. And our females, which is over 36% worldwide. We are a company, our core business is technology, outsourcing business, and business process outsourcing, rather, technology and consulting, that is management consulting. Inclusion and diversity for us, like many companies, is quite key. And we have 2 of our core values really anchoring this portfolio. The 2 values that I'd like to share with you is best people. As a company, we really thrive to continue to find best talent for our business. And we do have an appreciation and an understanding that best people come from different backgrounds. So by default, there comes your diversity right there. The second one is also very key in terms of really driving the type of culture we want to create as a company. It is the respect for an individual. As we would like to call it at home, Accenture, we say each person is their own minority. So respect for the individual really then drives the type of culture that's required to ensure that diversity is sustained. Okay. I was in 2 minds about the business case because I knew that now, I'm going to be talking to the choir here, and having to really preach to the choir really doesn't make sense, does it? We all have a clear understanding of what the business case is for diversity, but I just thought let's just share these slides with you. No doubt, legal requirements become a minimum imperative for all of us. But the ultimate for all of us is really how do we get to a point where we create high performance through diversity. We're talking issues around strategic positioning, in terms of talent. We want to create an environment where talented, diverse work group wants to work in our company and stay there. Our clients, they are as diverse as we can imagine. We want to ensure that the type of business that we run, we really create value for our shareholders as well. The obvious one for me, which is probably my favorite, is, diversity is a factor of innovation. So it therefore becomes a no-brainer to ensure that, you stretch the diversity boundary to be able to really give yourself an opportunity to create as much of innovative solutions as possible within your business. It could be for your clients, it could be for your business in terms of flourishing. Are we still here?
Yes.
I must be doing a good job. I thought somebody would just, raise their hand and start asking questions. So thanks for bearing with me. The obvious benefits that we all know about diversity, which I've possibly touched on, the more diverse a work environment is, you have a stronger chance of creating innovative solutions for complex challenges. You have engaged employees because then each person is respected for who they are and what they bring into the business. So the engagement level then increases. I did touch on the innovation. Diversity is a factor of innovation. It has been proven that companies that have got a greater diversity do produce more financial results. So there is a strong business case right there if we had to talk bottom line. And ultimately ensuring that, as we represent the type of customer that we're serving, there's a sense of loyalty coming from our customers to say, that company does really represent the environment they're operating in. It is befitting to ensure that, I share with you how we run our I&D strategy. It forms part of our human capital strategy, which then fits in quite nicely with the business strategy. So there is a strategic importance in terms of that. So our journey. We are usually asked, as our Chief Leadership Officer said here, that, how do we define diversity? As a company, a solutions-based company, we really would like to take the widest definition of diversity, simply because it's not only from a right thing to do for us, it is a business imperative, which really squarely touches on how we do business as a company. So other than the usual suspects around gender, race or ethnicity, you can tell I work for an American company. Sexual orientation, the list goes on. We really try to stretch our boundaries as a company to ensure that, we are as diverse as possible. And we do acknowledge that the more we do that, the more challenged we are in terms of ensuring that, the whole mix works. That's why it is key for us really talking about the inclusion part of it. So how we implement inclusion and diversity in Accenture, it really is threefold. The company culture is what's quite key for us. The talent that we attract, grow, and really try very hard to retain. And ultimately how we contribute towards the society that we operate in. This for me is quite important, and I think you will share the same sentiments. It is, I suspect it probably has been spoken about earlier on today, to say, who actually owns this portfolio, who should be running it. There's issues around the power, the authority. Are we effective at the levels that we currently operating? So for us, the governance and stakeholder structure, we really did try to almost go outside of the tradition of where you would have your head of inclusion and diversity and then it just ends there. We really did try to broaden it up so that we have as many of the stakeholders involved in the process, and therefore that gives us a better chance to be able to really make some inroads. It is still tough, but this is where we are. So we do have a sponsorship from the global geography and the business entities, as we would like to call them, the countries. So how that looks like, our Chief Leadership Officer, who actually sits with the inclusion and diversity globally, reports directly to the global CEO. We also do have two types of forums, who actually assist in the strategic intent of inclusion and diversity globally. As a global company, there obviously would be challenges in terms of how do you then drive the channel of ensuring that is, whatever the intent is at the global level, how do you drive it to the locals, but at the same time still keeping the flavor of the locals. So the different areas such as our human capital and diversity leads in the geographies, one of them being my boss, Rose, who couldn't make it here. I&D leads like myself. We do have, outside of that particular formal process, we do have sponsors for specific initiatives. For example, in terms of women initiatives, we have executives who are assigned with that particular portfolio and are then measured to be able to really drive the objectives of those. I have spoken about business entities, so I'll move on. For us, this has been very key. I mean, other than having to really look at accountabilities from a leadership perspective, we've found that having to engage employees has been very effective for us. So diversity employee resource groups have been one of our success factors, which is where you would have the Women Initiative really being driven by your women, and it is a network, so males are also invited to be part of the process to ensure that we're not creating solutions that are one-sided, so to speak. So a lot of our efforts is really driven around employee resource groups to ensure that we get our employees involved in the process. The obvious story, leadership objectives. It probably is not something new for you. We do have, at the highest level, which we call senior executives, our managing directors, so to speak, across the whole globe, have got specific personal KPIs to ensure that there's a diversity component that is measured against their performance. So it's something that's very key for us. But also, as a company, we do drive, the monitoring process in terms of quarterly reports, tracking, how we do in terms of representation on race and gender, but also the emerging levels or the emerging areas which we now are driving quite robustly is around disability and the LGBT network, which is lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders. I must be honest. For me, the LGBT, when I joined the company over 2 years ago, was a groundbreaking exercise. So I suspect a number of you will probably have the same experience. So these are some of the measurements that we look at. I mean, we all know that if it's not measured, or if it's not clearly measured, chances of it getting done are quite slim. So although we do get to a point where we talk of inclusion and diversity, we tend to sometimes get carried away, from the feel type of things that we need to do. It's still very key for us to be able to measure the representation, because then, there's a ripple effect when that happens, because the more you then have a good representation within your employee base, the chances are great for you to be able to really influence the culture, over a long period. So for us, these measurements are quite key, and we do track them on a quarterly basis. Some of the initiatives I did indicate, we do have women's initiatives, and part of the activities that we put in place is there's specific training for our executive women to ensure that our pipeline for promotions are quite strong in order to ultimately influence the numbers. We do have mentoring programs, very effective, and also we have this wonderful tool. It's a women's network that's online, and it's run globally. Our women are able to really engage with role models in that platform. That's one of the beauties that we really are experiencing in terms of technology. The effectiveness of technology has been very useful, being able to get a mentor in China or India, but not only from a paper point of view, be able to really speak to them. If it's a daily thing, you could easily also be able to have video conferences, so that's quite useful. I did touch on the measurements. The same thing happens with ethnicity. In Accenture, there's 3 countries who have a very specific focus, and that would be South Africa, the US, and the UK. We are also driving this part of the agenda quite effectively to ensure that there is also representation of other groups as well. And specifically, in our instance in South Africa, we're talking Black people. So there's a number of areas which we do that. And part of the employee resource group that we are working in conjunction with EmpowerNet is really to help us have a safe environment to start having those robust discussions. It doesn't really help us much having to have, the corridor discussions of disgruntled employees is not very useful from a solutions perspective. So we really try to use these employee resource groups to keep ourselves honest, but also ensure that whatever initiatives are put in place are really aligned to what's required, on the ground. I did indicate lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgender. This is also a network group, so it doesn't mean that people who actually are part of this group are people who are lesbians or gays or bisexuals. Really, this has been very useful for us in terms of education and awareness, and we tap into this network quite effectively. It also helps employees, who are experiencing. Could be family members who are also out here. You get to be empowered by the information that's shared by this network. So, people with disabilities is also one of those emerging areas that we're focusing on. We've taken a huge investment globally to ensure that we start with technology-assisted accommodations. We have a process in place. We do understand that you can't do a prescriptive, across-the-board type of initiative. It depends as and when there is a requirement. So we have a process in place which then really helps us to be able to understand what initiatives and what accommodation do we need to, provide to who. Any questions so far? Okay. I'm almost there. Some of the recognitions that we've got, we've received as a company globally, you will see diversity in, just giving us recognition of some of the efforts that we've made in different areas, be it around race, be it around LGBT, be it around disability. We take this not with a pinch of salt. We really appreciate the milestones we've made. But I think for us, it just gives us a sense of we are moving towards the right direction, getting these recognitions. Our journey. We've been, to date, this is 10 years for the Global IND office to be in existence. Although our values have really depicted the type of company we'd like to have from the onset, the deliberate efforts around inclusion and diversity and ensuring that there's a management process and approach to it has really been effected from 2003, and we are celebrating our 10th year this year. And what that means for us is just a reflection as to how far we've come. We know that we still have a long way to go, as probably most of us in this room, but this just gives a sense that, we are contributing towards the right objectives that we've set for ourselves. And my last words will be, the journey continues. And I hope you are encouraged by our story, and looking forward to tackling more of your challenges. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you probably would like to have discussions around some of our initiatives. It's always good to share best practices. Sister Rose there is one of those informal mentors that some of us tap into, to really bounce ideas as we walk along the journey or as we run on the journey. So good luck to all of you, and I hope this has been helpful. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to take questions, if there are any. I can't be that good.
Any questions, please feel free to ask Gale. Gale, my question first to you would be, how did you manage to do that? Wing it so eloquently. Well done. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? You need a mic, or you can speak? Okay, sweet. You can come and speak on my chest.
I like the way you guys are phrasing it, the inclusion and diversity. My question is around, if we look at transformation specifically, that we're trying to bring in more blacks into companies so that we have this South African image. Now, our white folks, some of them feel like they're being excluded now. Have you guys experienced that, and how have you resolved it?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I forgot to say not difficult questions. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, right? So we do have the empowerment that helps us with the discussion specifically around the transformation agenda in South Africa. We also do have an employment equity committee that helps in terms of monitoring that process. So it has always been an encouragement to our white folks to come in and join in these discussions, because it's not a black thing, so to speak. And we've seen progress. I mean, the Empowerment Group was launched about 2 years ago. The first meeting, we had 0 white people. The last meeting we had early this year, you know, you could easily say about 10-15% of that collective had white people. So there is that sense. And I think potentially, you know, as part of the process in terms of having to have specific initiatives, for example, be it around recruitment, be it around promotion issues, even performance management issues, that does, you know, create that anxiety. But then the ERG groups help to become that safe haven, so to speak, where we have robust discussions. So it's no sugarcoating as to, you know, I actually don't like this process around having to do affirmative action or in the cases at the economy. So we then, you know, use these groups to really have those discussions, sometimes tough, but I believe it's just part of the process. Otherwise, if we're not going through those frank discussions, respectfully, of course, and with an understanding as to the bigger picture, we will still continue to have those. And part of having to get, you know, let loose of those curtains is to have those discussions. So it's a continuous challenge. It's a continuous challenge for us as well.
Wonderful. We now do have a handheld mic, so ladies, please feel free to ask a question. You won't have to speak off my chest. So, any other questions, please? Any other questions? One more, ladies. Please feel free. If you have a question for your fellow sister on stage, anything. Okay. There's one. 1 second.
Hi there, Gale. My name is Gale Shabangu. I'm very interested in the group that the empowering group. Empowerment. Yes. How did you go about establishing it? How did you mobilize the sponsorship and even get the black employees not wanting to gather outside Accenture to talk about their issues, culture issues, but to do it openly?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. Yeah, I'm glad you actually asked that question, and thanks for it. When it was launched about 2 years ago, it was officially launched, but the group actually existed 18 months prior. So you almost had those, you know, black people conversations, be it at the bars or in somebody else's house, to go and gripe about challenges that you're experiencing within the environment. That's how it literally started out. So we then posed a challenge to that group to say, if you want to be part of the solution, which we require you to be, because otherwise then the solution is not going to work, you need to come out of the underground, if that makes any sense. So that's how it was mobilized. It was initially a black thing at the corner, the coffee shops or somebody else's house, and really experiencing the challenges in the environment and going to that group to go and everybody just sharing or griping, whatever you want to call it. There came a time where that needed to elevate to something different. And prior to even getting this group to be launched officially, we lost a lot of black people. Because from those groupings, from those discussions, it was just something, nothing happened. And people just became despondent and they left the country. So there was a requirement to actually then get it out of the underground and let it be part of our solution. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, but are you seeing progress? Are you seeing progress since it started? Are people staying? Are you seeing better response amongst the employees, both black and white?
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of progress. There is some progress. For me, it comes out and it's demonstrated from the type of conversations we're having. It has moved from I myself experiencing these issues within this particular environment, I hate this environment, whatever the case is, to how then do we create an environment that is going to be conducive for everyone. If there's challenges, be it probably on the ground around projects, be it for black people or whatever the case is, we then are able to get to those factual issues and really try and deal with them accordingly, as opposed to just generic anxious feelings.
Does that answer? Thank you very much. We'll take, okay, look like we'll take 2 quick questions. Ladies first. Thank you.
I just want to find out, considering that Accenture is a consulting company, you don't have that much control in terms of where your people work. How do you deal with diversity issues in other people's environment?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Seeing that you're a consultancy company, I think I'm a bit too loud. How do you deal with diversity issues within other companies? In other companies, that's it, yeah? Perfect. Okay. That's the question. How do you deal with the diversity within other companies?
As a consulting company?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so we do have examples where we've experienced some of the clients who were intolerant, and our leadership, and specifically CEOs, had to have those tough discussions with clients because it then goes against our core values. So it's a continuous, reiterative discussion with some of the clients. If we're having challenges, I know in the last 5-6 years we've had one client that we experienced challenges with, and it was a boardroom discussion to say, we as Accenture have got these values, and there was a willingness, at the leadership level to say, if it means having to lose this client, so be it. But yeah, so there is that overall understanding. The question would be, if people are experiencing it at projects, it's a case by case. And that's how we deal with it. So your account leadership will have to assist in terms of really putting interventions in place and dealing with issues. And a lot of the times it's more perceptions than anything really. So when we then have those discussions, there is some momentum. Is that it?
Gale, thank you for a great presentation. I've learned a lot. I was looking at how you have phrased the concept of IND, which is inclusion and diversity. During the journey that you have walked within the company, has there been a situation where, in your engagements, you are confronted by some people who have an interest in the program about the notion of inclusion? I'm asking this because even in my head I'm asking myself, when we say inclusion, and we also talk about embracing diversity, are we talking about embracing diversity in a way of creating something new for everybody, or of including some people into what is existing? How have you dealt with that concept at that level? And if you may please assist me.
Sure, yeah. I suspect that becomes almost an art thing. The outcome for us for the IND portfolio is that in Accenture we aspire to create a conducive environment for all the best people that we bring on board. So whether you're coming in as a female or as a gay person, we really would like to get to a point where when you come to Accenture, you're able to bring the fullness of you, and there's no expectation that you will leave the female side of you at the door and come in to almost acclimatize yourself to the existing environment. That really is our ultimate. And the initiatives that we've put in place are to assist in ensuring that, you know, we create that. So the initiatives are to help us create that type of environment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gale. Can we get a brief